Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, and I'm here with a very special guest, Damo. How are you, mate?
Swiz, it's great to be here. Footy started last night, and we get a free hit to see see what form players are entering the season with.
Oh, 100%. And it's very unique. I can't remember a time in all my years of playing fantasy footy in any sport where we've just had a free look at 8 teams. So there's a bit to talk about. I know there was a lot of action on X or Twitter or all socials last night in regards to how this game plan played out. Before we jump into that, mate, do you want to tell us where the good folks out there can find you and best contact you?
Yeah, so I co-host a podcast with Clarkey called the Footy Mailbag, and that's at Footy Mailbag on most social medias. I think there's a the at the beginning for Instagram, but everywhere else is just at Footy Mailbag. And I also have my own YouTube channel, which I somewhat neglect at the moment. Damo's Supercoach. Hopefully, I'll start by revealing my team and then a video diary throughout the season. But just Footy Mailbag for now, and live streams, podcasts, traffic light charts, all that sort of thing on our socials.
Brilliant, mate. And actually meeting Clarkey the other day. So, yeah, that's knowing his footy knowledge now. Yeah, definitely something everybody out there should be checking out. So, I do appreciate coming on here. Not a bad time of day over there in Western Australia, mate. But yeah, last night the footy season kicked off a little bit different up in Sydney, of all places. So, yeah, it was a good start to the year for the Swans. It was a pretty scrappy game for the first half. If you were selling that to overseas or into international markets, it probably wasn't the best. But definitely the second half, the Swans found their groove, winning 12-14-86 to 9-10-64 to kick off their 2024 campaign. We'll start off with the winning team, the Swannies, mate. Who impressed you the most?
Brodie Grundy recovered really well in the second half after pretty lackluster first half. But the first quarter, he kind of played and then went off for a long period of time. And at first I was like, that we've got some sort of injury here. And then he comes back on in the second quarter and almost doubles his score in the first 10 minutes of what he had in the first quarter. And then he was off to the races in the second half, almost adding 100 points in two quarters. So he's obviously still got it, still all Australian caliber, a great pickup for the Swans. And for a lot of people at 481K, he's looking like possibly the bargain buy of the season. And Matty Roberts, a popular cheapie for a lot of people. And I know the Phantom is big on him as well. And people weren't sure where he fit in the Swans team, but he looks to be taking some kickouts. He's across half back. His ball use was really on show, and I think he's going to be quite an important part of the Swans team this season.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty big on him. I thought there was definitely a role for him since they got him in last year, and it was only really injury that kept him out. So, two horses credit. He's always had a bit of an eye for the future for the Swans, and that's why they continue to be up there every year. Give a lot of these young guys an opportunity, and they've got the chance to come through together and build a real dynasty there for the Swans for long-term success. I think Roberts, you can probably lock him in with quite a bit of confidence, even though it's a little bit more expensive price tag compared to some of those other rookies we have in there, but still at 156K. I'd be putting him either at M8 or, if you want that little bit more bench security, M9, but I don't think you're going to go wrong there. And I think there's a bit of growth too, because he did obviously turn the ball over. 91 dream team for just the 76 Supercoach. If he can pick up a little bit of disposal efficiency there, there's no reason why he couldn't crack 100 for us going down the track.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he didn't turn the ball over that many times, 94% disposal efficiency for him. So I think it was only one or two that didn't really hit a target. The thing that sticks out to me is his meters gained is probably in the bottom half, probably in the bottom handful of the Swans for the entire night. So if he kicked a little bit longer to a bit more targets and just trusted himself with the ball a bit more, then he might be able to get a bump in scoring just from that.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that disposal efficiency stat can be a little bit misleading because, like, you look at Grundy, it says 43%, but it's one of those, probably. I sometimes feel like some players, like, they might kick the ball long to a contest, so it might not actually count as like an effective disposal, but they've still bombed it 40, 50 meters down and probably has got his points where, Roberts, a couple of, I think that, the twice that he did turn over were pretty bad turnovers, so it probably hurt him a little bit more with that scoring. But nonetheless, there's a lot of confidence in there. For me, Isaac Heeney, I feel like he does this to us every season, but the 144 Supercoach, he was just on fire from the start of the game. He, in those centre bounces early, especially without Taylor Adams being there, and they've got no Callum Mills at the moment either, Luke Parker. So there's a lot of Swans missing. Adams and Parker look like being, well, they say 4 weeks, but the Swans are away. So you would think with a bye in round 5, they might not risk them and bring them back until after their bye, because I think it's the Eagles in round 4 off the top of my head there. So it's probably not unless there was something drastically going wrong with the Swans form, and I don't think it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I think we've got enough confidence to say they'd probably come back after the buys, which probably gives Heeney plenty of opportunities. That midfield for the first 4 proper rounds.
Yeah, for sure. Heeney has burnt a lot of people in the past, and we've been promised this sort of role for so long, and even Longmire said before the game that he wasn't sure how long this would last, especially considering they need his class up forward as well as around the ball. So do you select him knowing that there could be a role change pretty early in the season, or do you sort of ride the sugar high that he is on now and then work it out later, potentially at the Swans bye in round 5?
Yeah, well, the 14 CBAs was, a bit of a sight for sore eyes, because we always wanted to see that Heeney role in the midfield and absolutely smashed it. There's 2 parts to this. I think I am leaning more towards selecting him now. There's potential there if he's playing midfield that, he could get on a bit of a roll after the Pies next week, which is a tough game. The Swans do have a pretty cruisy fixture, Tigers and Bombers, West Coast. So you would expect probably in one of those games at least Heeney could potentially do another 140. So I like the points on field part to it. I also like the idea that if all those boys come back or look like coming back, I've been talking about that buy flip player more with the Giants, but the fact that Heeney has that round 5 buy does open up the fact that Brisbane, Carlton, GWS and Gold Coast would have all had that first buy, so you could potentially side flip him to one of those players and hope that Heeney's made somewhere between 50 and 100k during that stage. And the other part is, like, things change. Like, if Heeney's form is just that good, and let's just say he dominates for this 3-4 week period, there might be a thought where, well, maybe it is Luke Parker just goes into the forward line and it's not Heeney moving from there. I know sometimes we get so set on our thoughts about teams and what they're going to do, but clubs are very fluid with these situations too. And why would you want to change something that's working just to fit another player? In Parker's case, who's been a brilliant player, one of my favourites, he is getting a bit on. So why would you move that just to accommodate him when you've got one of your young, well, now middle-aged stars just dominating?
Yeah, for sure. It's always it's always a little risky to flirt with form, especially if a player is doing so well in a position that they've only been filling in on. So, and Luke Parker's shown that he can be a quite effective forward, and he's a hard matchup in the forward line because he's got the strength, he's got the body, he's got the experience. He's just a good footy brain that it probably doesn't matter where you put him, he's surely going to have an impact.
Yeah, and they, like, Gulden had 13 CBAs last night, but we know he can play out on the wing as well. So they've got a bit of flexibility. It's a bit like the Bulldogs we talk about with Bevo just throwing players all around, but Sydney don't do it just for the sake of doing it. They've actually got players who can play multiple positions just because they are skillful in in them. So, and you even look at like Jake Lloyd last night moving up in the wing. So he's got the ability to go wing and half back, and Parker. Yeah, they've got all these players outside of maybe row bottom. I feel like he's a little bit one-dimensional, but a lot of the rest of their team can move around, which gives them much flexibility going forward. The two other players that I think we need to talk about, which are quite popular. First one is James Jordan, the former D. Went in the midfield, just the 5 CBAs last night. I thought he started quite slow, but managed to work his way into the game. In particular, the 7 tackles. He really got involved in that third quarter, putting some defensive pressure around that D's, around against the D's midfielders. What did you think there, Damo?
Early on, I think he was playing a strict wing role. So he was holding his width, staying outside the contest, being a couple of possessions away from where the ball was, just to be that outlet sort of kick. But with Sydney having such shallow wings and not a lot of space between the arcs to sort of for wings to really get going, he wasn't involved in the play as much as he probably would have liked to be. And obviously the coaches made a change at quarter time to make him sort of follow the ball a bit more and get more into the contests. And that's when he started to really get involved in the game. So he went from something like 10 at quarter time to 38 at halftime, and then ended on 81 for the game. So whatever role he plays might change from week to week, but he seems to be a player that the Swans want involved as much as possible within games.
100%. And they've obviously got him for a reason. So, I think we can have a lot more confidence on the fact that he's going to have a role in there. It just depends on, I guess, how much midfield time, but definitely early in the season. I think, as we've just talked about with Parker and Adams there, he's going to get some opportunities in the midfield, and if not, he's going to be playing out on the wing anyway. So I think it's probably nearly what I expected from him, like 80. I'd happily take 80 each week from Jordan. And hopefully there's just that one game, maybe, with that draw coming up, that he can sort of push that 100 plus, and maybe it'll be somebody who we can sort of upgrade coming into the second half of the buys, those mid-year buys. Because the forwards are so poor this season. There's a lot of flexibility in the fact that we can choose these mid prices, and if they're going to go 80s, they're going to do a job for us. They're going to be probably the least of our sort of upgrade problems, when the best forwards are anyway. I'm going to average 90 as it is. So, I think I know there were some concerns early, but I'm pretty happy with Jordan in my side.
Yeah, and he had multiple opportunities to get on the end of a few scoring chains as well, but he probably wasn't standing in the right spot. But the more he learns about his teammates, the more he learns about the game plan in a real game situation, he'll put himself in spots where he can get into a scoring position. And I know at Melbourne, he was hitting the scoreboard a bit more regularly towards the end of his time there, when he got the chance to play full games. So hopefully we see a scoreboard impact from him sooner rather than later.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it wasn't the greatest night for wingers either. The conditions were pretty slippery. Now, this guy played a little bit more midfield. So he did have, as we just said before, the 13 CBAs, but he was a fantastic winger last year. And that's Errol Gulden. Poor night from his standards, just a 77. If you're somebody who was looking at Gulden, is that just because of that 77 now you just got to pass, or you just go, okay, that's just one blemish that I didn't have to cop, and you still can pick him with some confidence? Where do you sit with that, Damien?
I don't own him, and Ground Zero was a big part of not wanting to own him. I was trying to make my midfield as round zero free as possible, so that's the reason I haven't picked him. But before this game, he was someone who I did want in my midfield eventually, and this 77 will mean that he does drop in price pretty early on in the season, and who knows whether having no Parker or no Adams there contributed to him scoring like this, because obviously being a winger, he probably didn't attend many centre bounces last season, probably was a little bit more protected around the ball by his teammates. And if I was an owner though, at the moment I'd probably err towards perhaps dropping him for someone a little more solid in their role, someone who isn't filling in, just because, well, we saw it with Rory Laird last season. He scores a 50 in round one, so everyone was sort of trading him out with the plan of getting him back in later once his price sort of evened out a bit underneath where he started. And you could potentially do that with Errol Gulden. And I know it sounds awful to, remove a premium that you've put all this work into in the preseason, and premiums will always bounce back if they're real premiums and all that, but it doesn't cost you a trade, and now you don't have to sit through the price plummet.
Yeah, exactly. So I think even though that good fixture coming up a little bit later, potentially Collingwood hopefully will keep him down a little bit more. And yeah, if he could drop somewhere between sort of 50 and 70K for us, that would be perfect as especially if you're somebody who might be looking at like an Elliot Yeo, Nick Martin situation. Martin starts in your midfield, Yeo starting in defence. If Yeo could potentially stay on the park there for 6 weeks, the guy's going to probably score 90 to 100, if he could make 50 to 100K, 100 being the perfect, situation, then comes sort of that after the Swans bye, you could move Martin back to defence. Yeo comes to like a Gulden, and it might only cost you, 20, 30K to get Yeo to Gulden. So there's potential there, depending on what Gulden does in the next couple of weeks, that, a play like that may pay off for people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pick Yeo myself, just that I can't go there.
Yeah,
but
I'm a bit like that too.
But the example makes sense. Like,
yeah,
it could be a Gideon Coleman, could be a Harry Himmelberg, could be anyone along those lines around that price point that you could eventually move on to an Errol Gulden once his price bottoms out. And I think Leckdog refers to as the Bruin maneuver, where you could jump off Errol Gulden while he drops in price, jump on someone while they raise in price, and then sort of trade one for the other, like passing ships in the night a little bit.
Yeah, the big one I kind of want to look at is Gold Coast Richmond Jaden Short, because he is in that right price range, like at 550. We get a free look at him tomorrow night. And if he was to go, say, 110, 115 in his first game, he is in the perfect price bracket. He's got the role. Injury history has never been a worry there for Shorty. Definitely somebody that you could flip, and it works with the perfect buy situation as well. So, there's a bit of food for thought there. But that'll do with the Sydney Swans. Oh, I should ask, so out of those Swannies at the moment, who do you have locked into your side?
At the moment, I've got Grundy, Roberts, and Jordan.
Beautiful. I've got, Grundy, Roberts, Jordan, and Heeney at the moment as well. All right, the Melbourne Football Club, poor start from them, unfortunately, for D's supporters. Though probably not the most Supercoach relevant person, was the clear best player for the D's last night, and that was Jack Viney. Normal game for him, contested possessions, was doing everything a bit different for him. He kicked the 2 goals, so I don't think we're going to see that every week. What did you think of Viney's game?
He looked like he's slimming down a little bit. He looked a little bit more leaner, and which probably made him move better around the contest, which was something that really stood out to me about his game. And 30 disposals, 14 of those contested, over 600 meters gained, a couple of goals. Maybe this is the role for Jack Viney. Maybe, and I hate to say it, maybe Clayton Oliver's taking a back seat to Viney and Petrarca now.
Yeah, and that could be a potential, just why Clary's trying to get fitness. I saw him playing the preseason game. He's, it's hard for a guy who hasn't had any preseason to be in ripping fitness, but the guy's just that good. That's why he got it 30 times. So I may as well talk about Clary right now. The 30 touches, only the 2 tackles, the 400 meters gain. Yeah, I thought he struggled, especially the second half, getting around the ground a lot more. And that was always going to happen with his conditioning. And that's going to take some time to get back to fully fitness. But the guy's a freak as in regards to ball magnet. And, it wouldn't worry me if I was thinking it more from like nearly an AFL fantasy point of view or dream team, or if you play any of them, for guys that are, just ball magnets, you're wanting your team. And I'd have full confidence having Clary in that, because I feel like he's just going to walk out and get 30 every week. Supercoach being a little bit of a different story. And there, I do have a little bit of worry about how long it's going to take for him to reach peak fitness, and can I potentially pick him up cheaper after his bye, because I still think it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to reach the heights that we've seen from him in the past.
Yeah, watching him play last night, he's clearly got the same sort of nous, but the touch was probably a bit off. He probably didn't have the same touch as he usually does. So 90 probably feels about right for how he played yesterday night. And I think before they did their sub, putting Jack Billings onto the ground, he was on the sidelines having a good old chat to Simon Goodwin, and I wonder if they even thought about subbing him out for Jack Billings at one point. So maybe his fitness isn't quite there, but he wanted to stay out there to try and get as much conditioning as possible, and Simon Goodwin just sort of allowed it just just to avoid the headache.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the unwanted media attention would have come with that as well, which then takes the focus off. Might have been a good thing because the fact that they went down, but there's definitely a part to that. They got a bit unlucky because they did sub Laurie, and then literally within 2 minutes, Bowie went down with that injury. So you'd be a little bit frustrating if you're on that Melbourne interchange bench, because it always seems to happen like that. But there were some other positives, but we'll talk about the other gun midfielder in there, which is Petrarca. I thought if Clary wasn't going to be there, this guy could go next level this season. Clary back in there, and we've just talked about how good Viney was. I thought it was just a standard Petrarca game. Missed a couple shots of goal, which has been probably the knock on him a little bit, and always felt like if he could get that right, he could definitely lift himself from that sort of 115 to 120 guy into those sort of mid 120s where the Bont is at. So how did you see Petrarca's game?
If you were hot on Petrarca before last night's game, I don't think his performance last night would have deterred you from holding on to him. 660K might be maybe top of his price range, though. So you're paying for him probably at his highest price, probably his peak, but you wouldn't be disappointed with what he produced last night. I think his score was just a product of Melbourne not being entirely impressive last night and having a few moments where they were overrun and looked a bit pedestrian.
Yeah, for sure. So I wouldn't be changing that if you had him in there. Each player in this midfield, I think we all think they're going to go like 115, 120 every game they play. Like the ton run is so hard for a player. I think maybe the last player last year was about round 14, round 15. Might have been Sarong or Dawson or someone like that. That kept it going. But yeah, all players have down games. Even the Bonts and that, they still pull out an 80 or a 90 every so often. So I think there's still a little bit of upside there for Track. But yeah, he did everything he could to try to get his team over the line outside of just missing a couple of goals. And yeah, if that was 3 goals straight, well, he's going 130 last night. So yeah, you get he's done nothing wrong again from a midfield point, and yeah, I think you can pick him with confidence. In regards now to a couple of the rookies, Blake Howes, very impressive debut. Very helped even more because of Laurie and Bowie leaving the ground. So at that bargain price of 123 now, defense, it's probably give us a little bit of confidence, because going into the season, I think we were a little bit worried about the rookies that we would have in defense.
Yeah, and like he doesn't have to score 90s every game. Just this 90 here will kickstart his cash generation right through the roof, and you could potentially jump off of him at Melbourne's round 6 bye and have 5 price rises out of him before, and then be able to go one up, one down, potentially from go Gibcus and Howes up and down in your defense. And yeah, 91, really impressive. Looking at the stats now, and he used the ball really well to get to that score. So he will have games where he doesn't use the ball as well, and where he's a little bit more rushed with his possession. And And last night's conditions probably suited him with, Sydney not really being able to find a target early in the game. But at 123K, you can't really argue, can you?
No, and I know some people go, "Oh, it's a bit of a trap." These rookies who score big first round and they patter out, plate it. It's sometimes can be frustrating if you're in this situation and you trade them in. But the fact that we get a free look at him, it's just an easy one to put back there. And the hope is, if he can at least still go 50, 60s at 123, he's still going to make 100 to 150K for us. It's just a bonus that he did get the 90, and hopefully that it gives him the confidence that he can play like that again and pick up maybe another 90 for us at some point over the next few weeks and just keep that cash gen going. And if he can make us, best case scenario is usually, I'd take 200,000 from every rookie that we had. It definitely makes the one up, one down a lot easier as we go into that upgrade season.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, was last night's score a bit of a sugar hit, or was he actually that good? And he was quite highly rated in his draft year, and many expected him to go much earlier than where he was selected by Melbourne. So who knows? Maybe Melbourne's got a first round talent sort of coming into their team for what I think they picked 32 or something in the end for him in that draft. So this might just be another top draft pick coming through for Melbourne who's going to, who's ready to take the next step.
People forget, like those COVID years, some of these young boys had entire years of junior footy ripped away from them. So it was hard for some of the recruiters to get a real read on players' development. And they're always going to say, some of these boys, it's going to take 2 or 3 years in the system to really find their spot, their confidence. And I think we're starting to see this more with the amount of rookies that are available this year because they've had a couple of years now, COVID-free, able to train with senior players and just build into their work for the hopefully, which is going to be long careers.
Yeah.
All right, there was a couple other ones there. We'll probably cross off the release Bailey Laurie. There's nothing really to talk about there when you get subbed off for a 20. Jack Billings, I think so many people are trading him out pre-game. At least the 11's going to cycle out quickly, but the fact that they even thought about using him for a sub, that will make some decisions easier because I know a lot of people are sort of trying to debate between your Fifes, McKenzie, Harms, Jordan's in that forward line. So that's one we do not have to be worried about. And he's still got pretty high ownership in there. Is Billings.
How about the chaos before the game when he was named sub?
Yes.
The panic was just, I want to say beautiful, but I don't know if it was beautiful. It was almost it was almost tragic.
It was. And this is the one disappointing thing about round zero, because there'd be people there who probably would have missed the lockout and like, what do you mean Billings is a sub? And then they're stuck with like an 11 points and their season's already ruined before it's even started. How many times? So getting saved of this sort of situation this year. Caleb Windsor, as I said earlier, not a night for wingers. Still managed to get the 13 touches, the 4 marks. Only the 117 meters gained. I felt like he was around the ball early, was trying to impact, lay some tackles. A 58, it's probably standard score from a rookie. The only problem is he's an expensive rookie, in that 180 mark, and there's a couple other players like Lazaro, Huswaite, who are the same price. So, Windsor, what did you think of him, mate?
I don't think his score properly rewarded how he looked on the ground. I think he passed the eye test for me, and I don't really look at Supercoach scores throughout a game. I'll look at halftime, and then I'll look after the game. And sometimes I might catch that someone's only on 10 points at quarter time, but I don't actually sit and watch the scores ticking over. I thought that Windsor's score probably doesn't match what I saw within the game, and maybe it was the shallow wings, maybe it was first game nerves. He did have a pretty poor holding the ball free right in Sydney's forward 50 that he probably had more moments than he thought, but I could see a little bit of panic, and that just comes with being a first year player. And I think he's going to be better for the run, and I don't think that a 60 is going to be. I probably think he's going to average maybe 65 to 70. So he's probably 10 points better than this in most cases, in most games. But first game, small ground, shallow wings, probably wasn't the ground for him to really come out of the blocks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The next 5 games, I've got 3 at the G and 2 at Adelaide Oval, will really assist, especially the MCG games, those wide wings, and just the warm weather too. He'll able to, really show what he's about. And those greasy conditions, like that's 61% disposal efficiency last night. A lot of wingmen are the better disposals on the ground, so I would definitely expect that to improve. So, yeah, as you said, early on in particular, I thought that first half he was getting into all the right positions. And sometimes that just happens in footy. You can get in the right position, but for whatever reason, pressure, just players missing targets, especially round one, you just don't get the ball. So I would definitely continue to consider him, and especially because Huswaite and Lazaro aren't playing this week, so it's not like we can sit there and go, okay, one of them got 100. I'm going to definitely change from one to the other. And a lot of people are looking at going 2 or 3 of them anyway. So, especially if you had Billings in your team, that's an easy way to find an extra 60K, because you can go down to his teammate in Windsor and then use that $60,000 elsewhere. The last one and the big one, and that's the big Maxi Gawn. I thought first half absolutely dominated the game, and second half may as well have not been out there, especially that third quarter. I'm pretty sure he had a negative quarter in there. Did win the hit out count by 4, but his impact on the ground game, I thought was quite unlike Maxi Gawn in that second half. You, Damo?
Yeah, well, it really felt like Grundy went out there and, battled with the devil he knew. So he knew how to combat big old Max, and really made him work in the second half. And I think Max was also targeted a little bit in the second half by Swans players, which made it difficult for him as well. But almost no impact. Could have almost been off the ground without any major repercussions for Melbourne. So yeah, and I wouldn't say it's a red flag. I would just say Melbourne probably need to find him some better support. And I know Tom Fullerton's going to play in the VFL this weekend, and maybe we see him come back sooner rather than later to assist Max Gawn in the coming weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Because the only assistance he had was Josh Shackey, and I think most Supercoach followers agree that he's definitely not the answer. Just unfortunately with Melbourne's woes down the forward line, they don't have really many other options to go to at the moment. The big thing for Maxi, he comes up. It doesn't get any easier for him this week because he's up against Tim English, who is arguably the best ruck in the competition. So yeah, it could be one of those games where he could potentially struggle. Like his last couple against English have been brilliant. Like he's gone 140 and 147. So they do play quite different. Like English does get more around the ground, where Gawn usually dominates him in the hit out. So it's not something that really, I wouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater right now. And especially because after that, he's going to play Hawthorn. Port Adelaide, it's most likely to be Soldo, and if his Soldo's injured, it could be a Sweet as well. So Gawn's going to have bigger and better days. I don't mind if you do go off him and because you're going Tim English and the whole English Grundy combination. I can live with that with teams, but I think that's probably the only play that you're doing. I wouldn't be trying to get too creative, like going Gawn down. I was willing to look at, say, a cherry for Grundy if need be, if Grundy didn't pass the eye test. But yeah, I think one's got to be either English or Gawn this season.
Yeah, and I was looking at something. I was looking at something at halftime, and I don't think Max Gawn traditionally scores well in the first round or the opening round anyway. I'm not panicked by this 72. And I remember a few years ago, Max Gawn and Grundy were the only 2 players really in the ruck line that people were told to spend money on over a certain amount of price. Over a certain price point. And I think they combined for about 160 points in the opening round, and everyone panicked and sideways and all that sort of thing. And then they came out the next week and they both scored 120s. So it's hard to do that when you play against each other. Someone has to come out on top, and in this case, it was Grundy. But I'm not panicking over Max Gawn, and I think he'll do okay against Tim English, and I think he'll be better for the run. And the Demons will know that he needs better support. They're not dumb.
Yeah, and outside of last year, you're completely right, because you've got to go back to 2018, I think it is, where Gawn scored over 100 in that first round. Traditionally, rocks do start a bit slow, and you know why Grundy was going to be up for the fight. It's against the team that he only played 1 year. There was that big contract, big offer to come across from the Pies, and he's up against his sparring partner. And Gawn and Grundy have always had great battles over a number of years. That's why, there was years where both were picked in the All-Australian team because you just couldn't leave one out. And so Gawn was Grundy was definitely up for the fight. And maybe Gawn was probably not expecting as much as the pressure, as you said, the attack from the other Swans players on him. And we've seen this in the past as well, where some teams, in particular Port Adelaide, were quite famous for going after Gawn in games and, probably trudging out an 80 or a 90. But it does need to be kind of a whole team effort, and not enough clubs probably do it and put that pressure on him. And I feel like once Gawn has a bad game, he's got too much respect for himself to not let that continue, too long. So he comes out usually the following week and absolutely smashes it, and he'll set himself for a massive game against Tim English to, try to see who's still the number one dog in town.
Well, yeah, and he even said after the game, or maybe even this morning, I can't remember when the quote was from after reading the article on Fox Footy, but he was saying, if that's how people are going to play against me this season, then I've got other tricks that I can pull out to get ahead. So he knew that he was, that he was dominated last night, and he's not going to allow it to happen again. So I think this opening round score, I'm not going to say he's not going to have another subpar score throughout the year, but I think that this one might just be, just a blip on the radar for him, and we'll get, good return for our money for most of the year.
And the other thing you got to think about Gawn, because of the conditions, he does like to drop back and take intercept marks, and it just didn't suit that sort of game last night. So Grundy's a little bit more mobile, so he could get his hands on. But Gawn with a dry game can usually sit back, take a couple intercept marks. If he kicks that goal, even if he just kicks that goal, I know he got 6 free kicks for, but still gave 4 away. So potentially that could have easily still been a 90 game, and you probably walk away and go, okay, Gawn, a little bit of ring rust, he'll get there. But even at 72, like, it was an 87 dream team. So I expect that, that'll come out of his cycle pretty quickly. And I kind of hope that a few people now drop off because I would love to see Gawn's ownership percentage under 50. I don't think it will, but there's definitely some will consider that. And you might be paying the price, in a couple of rounds' time when Gawn pulls out, and it was like one of those massive scores like he did in the community series. What was it, like 180? So I think we've got very short memory sometimes.
A week is a long time in Supercoach. A week is a long time for some people.
Yeah, 100% there is. Anybody else you'd like to talk about there, mate? I think we've probably covered most of the relevant players.
People were looking at Tom Sparrow, Trent Rivers, all that in the preseason, just by potential, potential midfield time, and Christian Salem as well. I know Christian Salem scored a 93, but all three of them probably aren't long-term picks in the end. Christian Salem probably has boosted his Supercoach draft average draft position up, but apart from that, I don't think either of them are really serving their owners if you have them at the moment based on last night.
Yeah, exactly. I think some of these guys are sometimes more of a draft prospect, especially like a Trent Rivers. I know a few people were talking about him. He was going quite high in drafts, but it was a pretty poor score there. And probably the biggest issue with Melbourne still is what they're going to do going forward. Like Bailey Fritsch was a one-man show up there, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of soldiers they can get back in that forward line, because their Achilles heel for the last probably couple of years has been scoring. Early on, they couldn't get near, like they couldn't kick straight, which what was pretty well. I think it's fair to say, and this is no disrespect to Collingwood supporters out there watching this, probably cost them a flag last year. Like they had the Pies on the rope, they had Carlton destroyed if they could have kicked straight. And yeah, I don't see how that's been fixed. So we'll be interested to see how they try to rectify that going forward.
Well, they recruited Shane McAdam in the off-season, and I think he's going to be a great addition to that forward line when he's finally fit. But they don't have a return date for him from a hamstring injury. Cozzy Pickett wasn't playing this game. He was unavailable through suspension. Just those two guys added to that forward line is going to do so much for them once they are available. And only one of them really needs to come back for something to start clicking. And then if Van Rooyen and then maybe Fullerton gets a chance up there, they're going to have some marking targets. They're going to have some ground level threat. They're going to have some aerial threat. Shane McAdam can jump on anyone's shoulders. So I think their forward line is going to be better once they get some people back, but they probably are missing as much in their forward line as Swans are missing in their midfield.
Yeah, exactly. And one quick one I'll touch on, Stephen May held that back line together again last night, and I think they've got a mini little May coming soon enough. So, I wish him and his partner all the best, but that might be it could be big things for him. He could be a real smoky, because we know sometimes, that sort of good positive energy at home can translate to on the field. So I might just throw that out as just a real random smoky this season, that I wouldn't be surprised come the end of the year that Stephen May might just nudge top 10, or maybe up until the birth of his bub, and then that might kind of drop off as parenthood takes over. But it's amazing how those side things that we never think about can just affect a player's performance.
Well, the draft doctors always talk about the father spike. They once someone has a baby or gets married, so the family spike, I suppose I should call it, their score seems to go up a little bit, or they seem to play with their head a little bit higher or something. So maybe Stephen May comes out of the blocks and averages, 105 this year out of nowhere. But I mean, it's not really out of nowhere because he's done it before.
Yeah, he's done it before, and we've seen it with Harris Andrews have really big years. Like there's always defenders, and just maybe depending on how they sort of play the game, or if their forward line is struggling, then you just might continue to see a little bit more down defense as well. I know him and Lever kind of alternate a little bit, but it's that sort of random parts of footy and any sport that sometimes you can just see that sugar hit for players, and potentially that could be just one real left field, especially if you're in some draft leagues. You might want to try to trade, and it might be just a real smoky for your defense. But apart from that, mate, I think that's covered everything from the first game, Sydney to Melbourne. It'll be a really interesting lot watching for the next 3 games. Don't go blowing up your teams completely just because of one result. Sort of back in that pre-season knowledge, but at the same time, do use it to sort of guide. I think those couple of, if you're on the fence a little bit about Grundy, that will give you some confidence to put him in. Heeney's definitely something that you've got to need to now look at, just because of the role, depending on how you want to structure your side going forward. And I think those rookies have probably given us a little bit confidence, is what I've taken out from this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll speak about my own team. I was tossing up between a few cut price guys like Jack Steele, Nick Martin, all that down, and had Jack Steele in there as the highest option. And just after last night, I've gone Steele down to Nick Martin so I can afford Matt Roberts, who wasn't in my team initially. So just little changes to improve your team. You don't need to completely rip everything off the canvas and then start again. You've done all the research in the preseason. One game shouldn't completely change things for you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the biggest advice I think we can give to players playing at home, because there are times like that where we see one game, we get very reactional, and like we've got to blow up our team. And we just, as you said, 1 week's a long time in football, but Sometimes we've just got to look at the bigger picture, and it is a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So unless that's how you play and you just try to play for the round one weekly, but only one person can win that. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to think about that. But mate, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to have you on. Make sure you enjoy the rest of that beautiful Western Australian day out there, and yeah, we'll definitely catch up throughout the season.
Thanks for inviting me on, Swiz. Always love helping you Insider boys out, you, Ben and Chris.
I really appreciate it, mate. All right, to all the community, I will be back soon as the other 3 games take place over the weekend. Apart from that, take care. Bye.